Good morning. Glad to see a lot of familiar faces and some new ones. Thank you for that segue. It was the perfect lead in to the Department of Commerce's One NC Small Business Program, which I'm the grants manager for. And it does complement the federal SBIR STTR program. And a little quick background on the program. So it's been in existence for 20 years, and has two components to it. Well, here you can see a map of our distribution over the life of the program. And that keeps expanding. We're proud of that. We are trying to continue to reach all parts of the state. And to date, we have awarded over $41 million, over 900 awards, and to over 500 small businesses in North Carolina. So there are two parts to our program. There's the incentive program, which it will reimburse you for expenses incurred preparing your federal application. And the intent, of course, SBIR phase ones are super competitive, varies from agency to agency, but on average about 16%. So it's very tough, and a lot of small businesses working, with their own sweat equity and having a difficult time getting off the ground. It's a hard decision. Do I put the time 300 hours into preparing this application where I may not get awarded? So that's where we want to help, and we can cover some of your expenses. And we'll go into more details of the requirements shortly. And the purpose is to increase shots on goal. So we want to see more applications from North Carolina going to the federal program, and ultimately in hopes of bringing more federal dollars to the state. So then once you are successful in securing a federal award, we do have our match program, and it does just that. It matches a portion of your federal award. There are far less restrictions on our funding on what you can use that money for. And the intent is to intensify your research during phase one in hopes to strengthen your phase two efforts and application. And again, to secure more federal funding coming to North Carolina. And data does show, and we're proud to say in both of our programs with the incentive and the matching, the North Carolina's track record success rate is about 10 points higher than the national average when it comes to securing phase one and phase two awards from grantees that have benefited from our program. So this is how we fit into the federal program. And again, the incentives to help you prepare your phase one application. And then that the matching award is to help bridge that gap between phase one and phase two funding. And also I wanted to certainly show our role in the state's overall innovation pipeline and how we fall there. So you can take a look at that. And of course, we're glad to sit there kind of in the second step along with the SBTDC and some of our other partners that are here in the room. So basic eligibility criteria, this is for both programs. And I will say each have some specifics, nuances to their program, to the incentive versus the matching, but this pretty much covers both programs, basic eligibility requirements. So you must be a for-profit small business in North Carolina. North Carolina has to be your principal place of business. So with remote working becoming so rampant these days, having a remote employee in North Carolina does not necessarily make you eligible for our program. So we want to see that you are, now we do have a few companies, they may be headquartered elsewhere, but it is evident that their principal place of activity is in North Carolina. So anyway, you need to be registered with the Secretary of State's office, just mentioned the primary place of business, and a minimum of 51% of the work proposed in your federal proposal must be conducted in North Carolina. Now, it's certainly fine to partner with out-of-state agencies or consultants or universities, but the majority of your work must be conducted in North Carolina. And you cannot have any overdue tax debt, that's local, state, or federal. And you cannot be on the North Carolina suspension of funding list, which is a real thing. This always catches people by surprise. And so this is where I'm putting my grant administrator hat on to tell you your administration history is very important. So make sure your reports are turned in on time, because ultimately you do not want to get on this list, because this would not only prohibit you from being eligible for our program, but it would prohibit you from any funding from the state of North Carolina. So let's see, and then disclosures of consultants, that was something implemented back during the Purdue administration, and it's still on the books. And so we just ask that you do, if you receive some help with the application, you disclose it in your application to us. So here's the basic outline of the programs, and you'll see there are a lot of TBDs up there right now because we, like the federal government, we do not have a state budget yet. So I can't answer probably what everyone's biggest question is going to be is, what are your awards this year? So our board, this is an appointed state board of 25 members that represent university and industry that serve on our board. They have a very difficult job of trying to balance providing as much support to as many companies as possible, but also at a meaningful level. So this past year, awards were capped at $75,000 for our matching award. Now, it's in statute on the incentive, so that is always going to be a maximum of $12,000 for the incentive. But it does change with the matching based on the amount of funding that we have. Now, if the state continues with a continuing resolution, we do have $2 million. So we do know we will be releasing a fiscal year 26 solicitation. But we are keeping our fingers crossed. The conference committee will reconvene October 20th. So it's our desire to wait until then just to see if a budget, probably not a comprehensive budget, but maybe some mini budgets, and you just never know. We may get some additional funding. So we're waiting for that because all of that impacts the board's decisions on eligibility criteria for the year. So the big thing about, there are limitations. I think Ladson mentioned limitations at the federal level, also at the state level. We do have lifetime limits. And that too is one of the things that will, I'm sure, be included in the annual solicitation of how many awards a company can receive. But again, that's to be determined till we know for sure how much money we have to work with. But the key factors with our programs, the date of your submission to the federal SBIR program is a qualifying factor for our incentive program. And so your application must be submitted during our solicitation period, which runs with the state fiscal year. So that will be July 1 of 25 through June 30th of 2026. So even though we will not release our solicitation until most likely November, it'll be retroactive back to July 1. So, and with the matching award, the key dates is the official notice of award from the federal agency or the executed contract from the federal agency must also fall within our solicitation period. And we'll get to, let's see, yes. Criteria changes year to year. So do not assume if you were for some reason previously not eligible, do not assume you won't be eligible this year because there are minor changes every year. So here's the basic structure of the incentive program. So we mentioned the tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, Krista did. And basically your tier 3 counties are your most prosperous counties, the 20 most prosperous in the state. And then there are 40 tier 1 and 40 tier 2 counties. So we do provide a higher reimbursement rate to those less prosperous counties that fall in a tier 1 or tier 2 designation area. And again, as I mentioned, the award cap for incentive is $12,000. And then also, we did just a few years ago change some of the guidelines to allow, and again, this was because of the low success rate for phase 1 awards. Staff felt it was very important to reward that learning curve that you're on if you're a first-time applicant or even a second-time applicant and don't secure a federal award, because there truly is a learning curve. So we now do allow, if the state has funded an application through the incentive program that did not get funded, but you talk with your program manager, you get some additional assistance, you revise and improve that application and decide to resubmit, you can resubmit to us again. However, if it's a proposal we've already funded, second go round, we're going to limit your award cap to $6,000 instead of $12,000. But I do think it's important because it does take a lot of learning when you're early and new to the SBIR program. So any questions so far about tiers, reimbursement rates?
Can you just clarify that 12,000 is the max, no matter if you're tier 1 or tier 2?
Correct.
Okay. But the percentage that you can get of your cost goes to 75% versus 50%.
The reimbursement rate, yes. Yes, that is true. That is true. And I just had a thought that's just escaped me. I thought, oh, let me add. Oh, well, yes, let me impress upon you, it is reimbursement rate. So you do have to have incurred the expenses. And if you are doing it in-house, paid yourself, which I know often small businesses don't do that, but if you have to show that documentation because legislatively it's written as a reimbursement program. So I cannot reimburse for your sweat equity or in-kind service. Believe me, I have argued that point with our attorney many times because I would like to, but I can't. So what's eligible with the incentive program? Most often, the most common expense that we see is reimbursement. Again, if you're doing it in-house for this, whatever you paid yourself or your employees for their time to prepare the application. Again, if you're new, we do strongly suggest you invest in an experienced consultant or grant writer, and that would certainly be an eligible expense with our program. I apologize for some of the dated wording, but this comes directly from the statute. And as I already mentioned, it's a 20-year-old program. So some of the language seems outdated, but technically these are listed as eligible per statute. A newer addition are filing fees for patent applications and maintenance fees. It does not cover your attorney billable hours preparing that application for you, but the fees that have been paid directly to the USPTO office for these certain fees are reimbursable through our program. And that's been a very welcome thing for a lot of our grantees. You can see what's not eligible. Again, the legal fees, in-kind service, indirect costs. When you submit salaries, do not include loaded salaries because fringe and indirect are not eligible for reimbursement through our program. And also the equipment purchases. Again, I know $300 isn't a lot, but also let me clarify because I see it quite often. People may submit 5 or 6 or 7 different pieces of equipment up to $300, but this is going to be a one piece up to $300 that's eligible for reimbursement. So any questions about eligibility? Rent is actually something I should probably spend a few minutes to clarify. Again, your general office rent is not eligible. That's an indirect cost. But if you have leased specific lab space that is needed for to work on the research that's proposed, that potentially could be eligible for reimbursement. But your general indirect office space you're going to have, whether you're applying for this, this federal application or not, or is just a general business expense and would not be eligible. So the matching program, the structure of the matching program, again, we don't know yet for sure. Legislatively, we have the authority to award up to $200,000 per award. The program has never received enough funding to be able to do that. So over the years, we've seen anywhere from $30,000 to $100,000 awards. If I were to guess, and again, it's pure speculation, this past year, the awards were $75,000. I would like to see it maintained at that level and not drop. Of course, it's not up to me, but we'll see. So anyway, the award amount is to be determined. And even if you're awarded the full $75,000, you'll receive 75% of that up front. And then you actually have to qualify for the final disbursement. Yes. Thank you. The final disbursement. So that's the additional 25% of the award, which comes when you have been invited or eligible and you have submitted your phase 2 application to the federal agency, regardless of whether you're awarded the phase 2 award or not. You just have to have applied for it to then receive that final disbursement from our program. So it is for phase 1 and fast track only. Our program does not yet include phase 2 or direct to phase 2 awards. And we talked about the dates. Eligible use of funds, like I said, pretty much as long as it's related to the research that's in your proposal, it's eligible. I feel like our requirements are pretty minimal. There's some interim status reports and a final report that are required of grantees, and a state grant compliance report annually when you receive funding. And this is how you apply. You go to our website, go through, get to the 1&C Small Business Program page, apply to programs, and then you'll have a choice. The incentive, there are 3 separate applications. If it's the incentive program, SBIR matching or STTR matching. And any other questions?